All right, guys, and we're back continuing the lecture on Alcibiades, and in the previous lecture we sort of gave an overview of Alcibiades' origin, a brief history of his family, and the actions directly preceding his rise to political prominence in Athens. And we will pick up with what's known as the Sicilian Expedition, and immediately after the Battle of Mantinea, Alcibiades begins to sow the seeds for this grandiose expedition into Sicily, an expedition that will grant him the political and military clout needed to become the new Pericles, to become the new big man in Athens with no great political rival. And the reason he wanted, and well, at least the ground reason for his desire to go to mount this expedition into Sicily was that Sicily and the Greek cities of southern Italy were more favorable to the Dorians. And let me just backtrack a bit and explain what I mean by Dorians. So within Greece proper, there were three different dialects or main groups of Greeks. You had the Dorians, who were basically centered in the Peloponnese, and the Spartans were Dorians, along with the Corinthians, Sparta's good allies. They were all Dorians. The Athenians and the people of Attica were Ionians. And the people of sort of like the Greek heartland, the Great Plains of like Boeotia, where yeah, that's Thessaly, the Thessalian League, and so forth, located. They were Aeolians, and they spoke they all spoke Greek, but they spoke different dialects of Greek. And the best way to sum it up would be to say the differences in their languages and in their versions of Greek would, let's say, be the differences between Danish, Swedish, and Norwegian, to where they're all mutually intelligible, and it's really hard to discern whether they're different languages or simply different dialects of the language. Um, Okay, and so the cities of Sicily, the majority of the cities in Sicily and southern Italy, they were all Dorian cities, and they had close personal, familial, and economic ties to the Peloponnesian League. And Alcibiades alleged that these cities were one openly giving the Spartans money and openly giving aid to the Peloponnesians. That the Athenians had been fighting with one hand tied behind their back, essentially, because they were not just fighting the Peloponnesians, but they were fighting this wider extension, this wider association of Dorian Greeks, and that in order to break the power of the Spartans and to emerge victorious in their war against the Spartans, they would have to go into Sicily and crush the Dorians in Sicily, and then they would be able to reap all the benefits, the manpower, and the wealth that Sicily had, and then be able to transfer that back into the main Greek theater and just ride things out to a great victory. Okay, and now Nicias, the man who gave his name to the Peace of Nicias, he basically served as the foil to Alcibiades' great plan. He openly said that he openly called Alcibiades out for having designs on really just overthrowing the democracy and establishing himself as a tyrant. And most historians agree that if Alcibiades had the opportunity, he would have simply ruled Athens as a tyrant. He he's called a demagogue. And at Athens there were a lot of demagogues, but he was pretty much viewed as that one demagogue to fear. You like listening to him. You would like to have him at a dinner party, but you really want to watch him in the grand scheme of political affairs. And Nicias, he points out that to attack Sicily would simply be disastrous. During a debate in the assembly, Nicias is asked for his opinion on it, and how best to mount an expedition. And Nicias comes out and said, "This is insane. Sicily is way larger than the Greek homeland. There are more people there. It's not just the Dorian Greeks there. You have a part of the island was contested by the Carthaginians. You had the native Sicels in Greece, and not in Greece, in Sicily. You had the native peoples of Sicily, whom the Greeks referred to as Sicils. They were there. They would, of course, oppose all this. The Dorians would oppose all this. These cities are larger. They have more people there. It would just be a massive undertaking, one that would just be disastrous and ruinous for Athens. And the assembly, at this point they turned to Alcibiades, and Alcibiades pretty much sort of plays the crowd again and turned them against Nicias, and sort of says, oh well, Nicias doesn't want to do this because Nicias isn't a true patriot. He makes very damaging political remarks to Nicias, and Nicias is finally forced to give a number on how many ships and how many men, and he gives that, and the Athenian assembly says, okay, we see that, and they eventually begin to raise a force of about 134 triremes and about 30,000 hoplites for the Sicilian expedition, for this grand campaign to subdue the Greeks of Sicily and harness their resources to refurbish the Athenian war effort in the Greek home region. And now, with all that said and done, and before the expedition even begins, there's an event that unfolds in Athens, and it's known as the desecration of the Herms. And the Herms were simply these statues of the Greek god Hermes, the messenger god, and basically they were phallic symbols. And what happened was that somebody or some group went about the city of Athens, and they knocked off all the phalluses of these statues, and immediately Alcibiades is blamed for this by his political enemies, and it's still hotly debated. The general consensus is that Alcibiades, while doing outrageous things, most likely did not desecrate the Herms. A lot of people think that Nicias or the supporters of Nicias orchestrated the whole desecration of the Herms event. But anyway, Alcibiades is blamed, and before he leaves, he tried to demand a trial. He tried to clear his name, but the Athenian assembly refuses to begin the trial. They say, go on this campaign, and when you come back, we'll have our trial. But one thing that sort of happens as a result of this is that Alcibiades is named a joint commander along with Nicias. He's forced to share military command with his great enemy, and to sort of temper both of them, an experienced and seasoned general named Lamachus is also sent along. So you have this three-man panel, a three-man group, to command this massive Athenian force heading towards Sicily and the Greek cities of southern Italy. And now one of the other factors that led the Athenians to go ahead and intervene in this war is that one of the native Sicil cities, a city named Segesta, had sent an embassy to the Athenian assembly asking for aid in their war against the Dorian cities of Sicily. And they promised one, the aid and support of a number of cities in southern Italy and on Sicily, as well as their own military and financial support. And they sent 60 talents of gold, and a talent was an extremely large amount of money. It was basically, simply saying that, hey, come over here, we're going to bankroll this expedition, people are going to join you, we're going to join you, this is going to be great for everybody. And the Athenians, they set out, and they were expecting to, every port they visit, to simply have people throwing money at them, giving them free food, and to have men eager to join up with them on their military campaign. And well, lo and behold, nobody joined up with the expedition. As I said earlier, the Greeks of Sicily were known as Cycliots, and the Greeks of Italy, southern Italy, was known as Italiots, and none of them flocked to the Athenian banner. Whenever the Athenian force, this armada, neared their ports, they simply said, "Hey, we don't want any trouble. Don't bring any trouble here. We're not joining you. We're not trading with you. Sail on." And the Athenians, and from the very moment this happened, the Athenians began to sort of have second thoughts about continuing with this expedition because the aid they were expecting wasn't materializing. And once the armada, once the expeditionary force had reached over to southern Italy, the suggestions came clean and said, "Hey, we don't have any more money. Chances are no one else is going to join you, and we don't really have the manpower to support you or the agricultural resources to really feed you all that much. But hey, you guys are already here, so just come on and continue to fight this war with us. I mean, you can't turn back now. It'd just be embarrassing for you." And immediately after hearing this, Nicias says, "Okay, we must return back. We must go back and head back to Athens. Maybe go down and have a show of force in Segesta, but immediately return back to Athens. This entire campaign is over." The seasoned general, the seasoned commander Lamachus, after hearing this, he advises his plan is to simply go straight away and attack Sicily, attack Syracuse and subdue it. To make a quick victory out of everything. And Alcibiades' political plan was to simply use the Sicilian campaign to gain enough military and political capital to become top dog in Athens. He could not afford to have everything fall apart. Thereafter, if everything fell apart with the Sicilian campaign, thereafter he will be blamed for it. So he needed serious results to take back to the Athenian people to further his own personal ambitions. So Alcibiades, he comes up with the plan, and his plan eventually seizes the day. His plan was to continue on with the expedition and to sail around the island and attempt to court the native cities of Sicily to join the Athenian cause, and none of them do. None of them do. Aside from the fact that they all declared neutrality at the outbreak of hostilities between Sparta and Athens, these cities they were Dorian leading. They had closer commercial ties to the Peloponnesian League. It would simply not be in their interest to ruin themselves to basically do that. So Alcibiades is sailing around, not really convincing anybody. When all of a sudden an Athenian ship shows up in their harbor, and they bring word that Alcibiades is to return to Athens with them to stand trial for impiety. Not really for the desecration of the Herm thing. This was it was a trial for mocking the religion, the Greek religion, the Greek state religion. He was to return there and be put on trial for that, and he's taken away. And at this point, command of the Sicilian expedition falls to Lamachus and Nicias, and Alcibiades he's taken away. But an interesting thing happens when the ship is sailing by the Greek cities in southern Italy. Alcibiades engineers an escape, and he manages to free himself from the ship that he's on and escapes into the Italian hinterland. And we'll break here, and we'll resume our discussion, our lecture on Alcibiades after his escape from Athenian custody.